Hey everybody, Dr. Grant here, and today we're going to be talking about why dopamine is not your true ADHD problem. Yes, dopamine can be a bit an issue, but what I have found from my experience of working with people with ADHD, especially adults with ADHD for several years, and having ADHD myself, it is not always the case of it being dopamine. And so let me explain. There's several cases of why this is and where it is more of an issue of why I see why people have these different symptoms. And so I'm going to break this down into different case studies to really help you understand why it's not always the case. So this first case study did some lab testing with this patient. And the first thing I want to point out here is sometimes we will see that dopamine can be elevated as well as other areas that can be elevated, such as serotonin, as well as even GABA can be elevated. And if this is the case, then it really isn't a dopamine problem, is it? It is several other things that could be elevated. Now, it can be a dopamine problem because that's elevated, but a lot of people think it being a low dopamine problem, but it also could be elevated in an issue. And so typically what we have to do is look at, okay, is there certain things in your medications that are contributing to this where it might be spiking it? Maybe the dosage is too high, maybe the wrong medication, or do we need to be using some other alternative uses of different types of supplementation to help lower this down? And so that could be the case. Another reason, it can be also different amino acids that are low and not necessarily dopamine. So in this case, yes, dopamine is low with this patient, but there's several other different amino acids that are low, such as phenylethylamine or phenylalanine, tyrosine, tyramine, and also things such as even glycine is low. Glutamate is low. Also, even histamine is low. Everything can also be low and not it just being a dopamine problem. And if that's the case, then you can miss so much in your treatment with your ADHD if you're only addressing only just dopamine. And typically, when you're taking a medication, a stimulant medication, it's only addressing dopamine and also norepinephrine. Those two things. But look at all these other things that could be missing. If this patient didn't actually discover this, that I helped them by doing these different labs and discovering that there were so many other things that they were deficient in, it never would have been addressed. It would have been still just taking the medication, same medication of only addressing dopamine and norepinephrine. This is why it's so critical to understand that dopamine is not always going to be the true problem. It might be part of the problem, or it might not be the problem at all and missing so many other things that could be as well. Some other things also, other case studies, is it could be also different micronutrients that could be off, such as different B vitamins, like in this case, vitamin B5 and vitamin B3, like this patient was, or different like vitamin K1, K2, different vitamins, depends on the person, but those can contribute to your ADHD symptoms. See it all the time. It also can be things that can be contributing to memory issues of things such as like choline, so metabolites, like choline can be low, just like this, how this was with this patient. And also even serine of different amino acids. We already talked about this, but there's several different amino acids that we have to make sure that we're looking at. Also coenzyme CoQ10 was low. Different antioxidants can be low and can be contributing also to the ADHD situation, right? And also looking at omegas. Omegas can be also low, and that's something also really to consider. Now, another thing to also keep in mind is sometimes it could be other different medical issues that could be contributing to the ADHD situation and not necessarily dopamine. So some really big ones that I do find that could be an issue is like, for example, your thyroid can be an issue, as well as, well, I can't draw today, is also well as diabetes. So if there's a blood sugar issue. So when it comes to thyroid, what you want to be testing for is looking at TSH, free T3, free T4, and also anti-TPO. TPO levels, just to rule it out, rule it in. Now, why this is important, because if any of these are off, it can present just like different ADHD symptoms. It can present with focus issues, mental fatigue and burnout, brain fog, And so therefore you might be like having both ADHD and thyroid issues, but it never gets addressed. I see this all the time because when you're diagnosed with ADHD, a lot of times doctors will only look at that and just only adjust your ADHD medication, but forget that there's other things that could be contributing to it. And it makes things worse. I've seen this also issues with diabetes, is where maybe you might be pre-diabetic and sugar levels, when they are up and down and you're having issues with your sugar levels, it can cause issues with your focus and energy throughout the day. So you want to make sure that you're also testing for, your glucose and also hemoglobin A1C levels. Okay. You want to make sure you rule that out because it's a very common problem with people with ADHD. And if that's an issue, it needs to be addressed, right? Now, some other ones that also are really good to keep in mind is even looking at that I see this as a common problem, especially adults with ADHD, is typically cortisol levels being off, being too low. It's very hard to have energy, especially mental and physical energy throughout the day and focus throughout the day when things are low like this. Or they could also be spiked. So that's another thing. So you might be really high stress and anxiety with your ADHD, and then treatment's going to be different based off of that. So this is why it's important to really investigate and understand what truly is going on when it comes to your ADHD. Now, some other things too is also to even look at different hormones. Sometimes maybe your testosterone might be low, just like how it was with this patient, or progesterone is low, just like how it was with this patient. And so how that can also contribute and associate with different symptoms with ADHD is also mood changes, right? If you're experiencing a lot of different mood changes in your energy, it also can impact focus too. So it's really important to make sure that you are addressing all the possibilities of how it could be contributing to your ADHD and not just thinking it's just a dopamine problem. Okay. One other thing that I think that's going to be really important is definitely looking at when it comes to the digestive system. This is also another really important one to be considering. That's supposed to be a large intestine. Sorry, just to kind of draw on the spot. Now, why this is important is because let's say you do have a dopamine problem, or it's serotonin or GABA. 90 to 95% of a lot of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. About 50% or so is made in the whole digestive system of dopamine being made in the digestive system. This is why not just thinking about just the brain of it being an issue, but other vital organs that also contribute to the dopamine situation and other different neurotransmitters that can be contributing too. So if you have gassing, bloating, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, any kind of digestive issues, you better believe it is not allowing you to have a very good functioning brain, and it's contributing to your ADHD symptoms. So you want to get that fixed and managed and discover if that could be the culprit. Okay. But this is how I, treat and address all my patients, is looking at what can be also contributing to your ADHD symptoms and not it just being dopamine. Because what I find is a lot of times there's so many other things that are contributing to that, and it isn't necessarily like 50% of the time it might be a dopamine, but that's not the only thing. It's several other things that need to be addressed in order to help you eliminate those ADHD symptoms and have that optimal focus mind that you're seeking for. So if you'd like, my help to actually finding out the root causes to your ADHD symptoms, it requires more of that investigative work. I'd love to help you out. It requires more of that investigative work to dive in. And so what you could do is you could book and purchase your first consultation with me. It's a 45-minute one-on-one personalized strategy session where I could dive deeper into your medical history to understand the ins and outs of how your ADHD is causing all these different symptoms and really see the blind spots of what's going on here. And on top of that, be able to determine what would be the best labs to investigate your root problem with your ADHD, and then finally eliminate those ADHD symptoms so you can actually have that focused mind that you are seeking for. So all you have to do is just click on the link in the description below. It will take you there to purchase and then book the time appointment. Please do, if you have a spouse or significant other, please make sure to book a date and time that they can be there present, because I do like to have them there present to discuss more about how that might be impacting your marriage or relationships. And so it's important to have them there to require that. So if you really want to take the next step, booking your first consultation with me to tackle your ADHD and find the root causes, then all you got to do is just click on the link in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream. Thanks. Bye.